All right. Hey, everybody. Please say hello to Joe Gallois. Gallois.
Hey, Joe Gallois.
I say it right. I say it right.
Yeah,
But I was wrong. We are going to talk about what we do in the shadows, season 2, all the episodes leading up to the season finale, which will be this week. And here's something funny. We recorded this yesterday. Well, we tried to record it. We did this really great half-hour tight segment. Steph was a part of it. Jeff was here. Joe was here. I was here. And I got booted out by Zoom, so it didn't record. So this is, that's why I'm wearing a different hat. But
Nandor dropped by for 5 minutes.
Nandor did drop by for 5 minutes. Yes. So we're going to talk about season 2 of What We Do in the Shadows and kind of mention what our favorite episodes were and just kind of go through. Why don't we go through the episodes first, recap them a little bit, and then we can say at the end what shows we like, what episodes we like the best.
Yeah, okay. I shortened up the recaps a little bit from yesterday, so to make it a little easier.
Thank you. They're a little verbose, right?
Well, I mean, you had the entire Wikipedia.
I know. I just cut out the page. There you go. So yeah, and don't let me forget, by the end of the show, we did have a listener who submitted some songs via the new format, so we'll do that too. All right, so let's start, and of course, you can watch the show What We Do in the Shadows each and every week or on demand on Hulu and of course on FX. And the show stars Kavan Novak as Nandor the Relentless, Matt Berry as Laszlo Cravensworth, which is a great last name, Natasha Demetriou as Nadia, Harvey Guillen as Guillermo, and Mark Prosch. How do you say his name?
That's pretty much it. It's like German. Prosch.
Not Mark Probst or Jeff Probst.
No, definitely not Jeff Probst. As my favorite character in the series, Colin Robinson, who is the energy vampire, who feeds himself by making other people very. What does he do to them? He annoys them or makes them upset or mad or whatever.
He bores them to death.
Drains energy by boring them and making them have bad emotions and stuff.
Man, I think I would be good at that.
You are.
I know. I think I'd be a good energy vampire or emotional vampire. I'm pretty good at leeching emotions off of people. But enough about my weirdness. And Joe, what have you been up to lately?
Quarantining and then reading a lot of news and watching a lot of TV, and that's about it.
Yeah.
A lot of listening to people that need to be heard.
Listening to people that need to be heard. Well, you know who's not being heard? Comedians, unless they're on Twitter with their funny hot takes.
Yeah.
Have you done any of those virtual comedy things where you?
I did a few, and I wanted to quit comedy immediately after those. I did not enjoy 1 second of performing for virtually nobody and virtually everybody at the same time.
What was the reaction like from the audience? Do you don't hear their laughter at all?
No, you don't hear their laughter, and like usually from the shows I've had like been on and watched, they Twitch Zooms, I believe, or do just Instagram Live.
Mm-hmm.
You're under the gun because there's always like these time limits, and then they overbook the show, and then they got to jump into another Instagram Live or another Zoom meeting to do it right, and then half the audience leaves and never comes back. So it's pretty similar to a real comedy show when you're on the end of one, but there's no feedback at all as you're just talking to yourself in a room.
When do you think you'll be able to get back on stage in front of an audience?
When I honestly have no idea. Like I could say the end of the summer, but I honestly don't know what the country will be at in terms of like the pandemic. If we get another spike, I'm not going to bother going out there. And then you have all these showrunners saying like, well, we're going to take extra precautions and have several mics for the comics. And I'm like, that's going to last about 2 comics when you have to keep switching out microphones after every single one. And then you're going to give up about the 3rd comic into the first show. And then it doesn't matter. We're all spitting on the same microphone.
They're pretty gross, aren't they? Because I imagine they're worse before when you could smoke. It's bad enough.
Yeah.
Food particles and booze breath or just germs and everything, but no tobacco finally, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've never purposely smelled a mic, but there was, I think, one time where I put one up to my chin, and like I could smell it from there. I'm like, it was on the show before, but good Christ. I just put it back in the stand and just sort of performed like Norm Macdonald that night.
What does that mean? Just back?
Well, he has the microphone always in the stand. He just sort of, he's not holding it up to his face or anything.
Yeah. Not like Dave Attell, who makes, that's just like another person on the stage with him. He moves around, he takes the stand with him.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it won't be too long. You'll be able to do that. I mean, what do you do when you're a stand-up comedian and you can't do stand-up comedy? Do you do writing? Do you do?
Well, there's no eagerness to do so. So I've been falling in, I would all of a sudden think to myself, I haven't really written much lately because there's no open mic to go to. And if you do an online show, you don't really want to try out new material when you don't have feedback.
Right.
That's the thing about the online shows. You don't want to do new material because you don't know how it's actually going and you'll just throw it away. And it might have been good. And you don't want to, and then you're playing, but when you do your hits or what, work or not working. So then you feel those too. It's there's no benefit to it at all, except for saying someone saying oh, thanks, I'm glad I got to watch that show for an hour and take my mind off things, which is nice, but I don't get a benefit from doing new stuff or old stuff into a computer.
Well, let us, when you're back and when they open up the places and you're able to go do something, let us know. So we can come out and support you and tell our audience.
Absolutely.
Have you just been staying down there in the Queer Eye basement?
Yeah, the Netflix cellar down here, watching Netflix and stuff, and all the other streaming apps that have debuted in the past year.
Right.
I wish I had a Queer Eye basement. That would be pretty cool. Because I look it right now. I need a haircut, and thankfully I get to have one this week. But man, getting ridiculous.
I got a haircut a couple weeks ago. I just made sure it wasn't anything too hard. I just shaved it till anything that didn't look like I was going into the military. Get as short as possible to where I'm not.
You did it yourself?
I had my mom do it. She used to groom dogs, so I trusted her.
Just busting out the Flowbee and
yeah, the old Flowbee.
They don't laugh. The place I used to work, the barbershop, they had a Flowbee up in the attic. They never used it, but I thought it would be.
Oh, they should put that on the mantle and put it up.
Oh, doubt. I don't know anybody who ever owned one though. Back when they were being sold on television.
Neither do I.
Or if they even worked. All right, let's move on to our favorite vampire comedy show that's sort of like The Office, but not. What We Do in the Shadows Season 2, 9 episodes, starting with episode 1 from this season, which was called Resurrection, featuring Haley Joel Osment as Topher, who was Laszlo and Nadia's new familiar. After he was accidentally killed, they take him to a necromancer to be resurrected, and he ends up becoming a flesh-eating zombie who wants to snack on Guillermo, who we found out is more than capable of taking care of himself. Jump in, anybody.
Yeah. Haley Joel Osment was hilarious as the familiar. But he didn't give a shit about becoming a vampire or doing any of the familiar stuff. So Guillermo was pissed at him.
Yeah, he
had all these side businesses, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I liked in that episode because I think the first thing to do was show Guillermo protecting the vampires from other outside people trying to attack him. So they showed that, he is capable. Then when Topher goes after him, it was a nice little jump start to remind you that the last season you found out that Guillermo's a descendant of Van Helsing somehow.
Now, who were those?
They never explain how, but somehow Guillermo is a...
Yeah, they don't explain how, but who were those vampires that kind of look like the Strain vampires or I don't know, Nosferatu-looking vampires? Why are they trying to come there and kill everybody in Staten Island, or do they never say?
Well, the first season, then they kill the...
they killed the master.
They killed the main vampire, or one of the most important ones, at least.
He got drunk and was throwing up everywhere, walking with
Yeah.
Because they let him eat a piece of pizza.
Yeah. That was a very, very funny episode. Nice return to the series. And like you said, picking up where they left off. And the funny thing at the end is when they're fed up with having Topher, who is a zombie, they take him back to the necromancer, and it was all a scam so he can have all these returned zombies make license plates for him.
He's making license plate keychains, like little.
Yeah, they
kids
just
that
they
name
just sat him down in the back room and he started working. One didn't it?
yeah.
So if we move on to episode 2, which was called Ghosts, that's an episode where we see more of the Guillermo story starting to unfold, taking it out of the house and into another set. He joins a club. First of all, though, the main story is the vampires. Go ahead, Jeff. You tell the story.
What, the updog thing?
Yeah.
Colin Robinson's trying to tell the updog joke the entire episode.
Mhm.
Like, oh, you got some updog on your shirt, or oh, this tastes like updog. And just trying to get somebody to say what's updog to him, but nobody will.
So why are they? I forgot why they wanted all the ghosts in the house.
They decided that if they're vampires and they're dead, that their ghosts must be out there somewhere.
Oh, that's right.
So they had a seance to call their own ghosts back. And Nadia ended up having her ghost stay and be possessed inside that doll.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And then her old lover came back too.
Greg.
Yeah.
What's his modern name? Dave or Jim?
Jeff.
Yeah. Jeff?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. And he's Gregor, her lover throughout the ages. He shows up. And then there's the side story, like I mentioned earlier, of Guillermo going to the Mosquito Club. And now, did he know that they were vampire hunters, or I forgot how he got to that club?
Yeah, I forget if he thought mosquito was a code for vampires when he went to the club originally. But he found out that they were amateur vampire hunters.
Yeah, and they're all kind of nerdy except for Craig Robinson, who is playing a nerdy character, but he's still Craig Robinson, who's good in anything.
I think he went there to make to keep an eye on them, and then he realized like, oh, they're seriously doing missions, because like the next couple episodes they deal with it. He didn't realize how serious they were about vampire hunting.
Yeah,
so he just went there like as like a reconnaissance mission, and realized they got really caught up into it like in the next 2 or 3 episodes.
And that's also Abigail Savage as Tanya. There was a couple other people in there that I recognized, but I didn't write their names down. So we'll move on to episode 3, which is called Brain Scramblies, which is one of everyone's favorite episodes from the season. Again, the Mosquito Club returns. So like Joe said, we have Craig Robinson and Abigail Savage. And in this one, have they gone out? Is this the one where they go out to the house full of vampires yet? Or is this, I
believe that's the curse episode.
Okay. So this one is really the vampires get invited to a Super Bowl party, which they think is a superb owl party.
Right.
And it's funny. They go and now the premise of the show is their neighbors invited them over, or how did they know these people?
Yeah, they walk next door.
Yeah. Okay. They walk next door, and the people next door don't know they're vampires, but they think that they were figured out. So they try to mess up the one guy's brain, and which is why it's called Brain Scramblies.
Yeah.
Yeah, they both do it to him though, instead of just one person doing it to him.
Yeah.
So it really warps his brain bad.
They really messed them up there.
Yeah.
Anytime they have to act like normal human beings cracks me up because they're so bad at it. They've been vampires and undead for centuries. They don't know how to be humans anymore.
Right. Well, yeah. Isn't there an old lady in the house that's somebody's grandma, and she thinks she knows Nadia, and she does, but they all think she has dementia, right?
Right.
Yeah, they don't believe her.
Right. And so Nadia plays along with it, but she remembers when she was around when that girl was little.
Right.
Yeah.
When she was a little kid, she used to mess with that girl, and like there was something about a necklace being stolen, but I didn't follow that part of it.
Yeah. Well, then finally the next episode 4 is The Curse, and this is a hilarious episode. Again, Craig Robinson is back, and the Mosquito Club, they go out, and this is the one where they go out to the house to try to kill the vampires, right?
Yes.
And Guillermo thinks that they're going to his house.
Right.
He's relieved that they aren't. He thinks, oh, there's no more vampires here in Staten Island. Yet they go in, and the house is filled with vampires.
Those two twins were creepy as shit.
Yeah. Scary vampires in that other house.
Yeah, the show does a good job of like making it scary when they have to be. Like there's no real comical looking vampires when like they do play it serious.
Right. Yeah, and in the house, Guillermo proves his worth by what, saving people. And any of them die. One of them died, right?
He saved all but the guy whose van they used.
That's,
Right.
that's
And
it.
the whole the joke at the end of like that storyline was that they still had to return the van to that guy's mom. They use it in the morning, but he was eaten by vampires.
And then the main story is they get there's a Nandor gets
Nandor gets an email from like on AOL.com.
yeah, and
One
it's
of those chain.
emails that tell them that they have to forward it to 10 people or they're going to be cursed or whatever.
Yeah.
And they send it to old email addresses so they get the mailer Damon thing. And they think it's
Yeah.
Demon.
That's the thing that's so good about the show. Like Joe said, is they don't remember humanity, and now we're in the modern era, and they're just they don't know how to handle all that shit.
Yeah, in this episode, they're even out of touch with old technology. Like it's not even up to date. That's AOL or Hotmail, or whatever it was.
Right.
They can't figure out that. Like that's not even current day. That was like what 20 years ago. 20 years ago technology.
I remember I had AOL. My first AOL account was in 1996. And that is a long time ago.
Yeah.
Long time ago. All right, moving on to episode 5, which is Colin's promotion. Colin Robinson is promoted at his office. He thinks he's going to get fired, but he gets promoted, and it just gives him this sense of strength and ability that he never had before, and he really runs with it. And he starts getting more powerful, and he's able to fly. He's able to split himself into 3 different Collins.
And his head grows.
Yeah, his head becomes
Comically huge.
Looks like the leader from the Incredible Hulk comic books back in the
He looks like a Mars Attacks character.
Yep, absolutely. Meh. And since Colin is my favorite character on the show, this one really made me laugh quite a bit. And I forget the resolution of the episode. I'm going to have to go back and watch all of these again. But I love how he's in the house and he just bores the shit out of all of them. But he starts draining all of them when he's the 3 different vampires, right?
Yeah, and they start aging rapidly.
Yeah.
So he ends up having to quit that job and then start over at a new office.
That's right. So he just goes back to normal and everything's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So episode 6 is called On the Run. And this episode features Mark Hamill as Jim the Vampire and Madeline Martin as Lucy. Now, Lucy works at a bar, and it kind of plays into it absolutely plays into the story. But basically, Mark Hamill shows up at the house in Staten Island, and he is demanding that Laszlo repay a debt to him. So Laszlo, fearing, not wanting to pay it, being obstinate, flies off and goes and starts a new life in a rural Pennsylvania town.
That's Jackie Daytona.
Jackie Daytona. Hello, human. Would you like a human beer?
Well, I love the opening of that episode because it's just them in their front yard looking for sinkholes from all the buried bodies. And they all think it's a game, and Guillermo's not keeping track. They're like, oh, this one's 3 points. They're all just spray painting like the spots for the yard sinks.
Yeah, that's the beginning. And then Mark Hamill shows up all scary, but he's really just Jim the Vampire. How can you be scary if you're Jim the Vampire? Where is Laszlo? I did it better yesterday when we recorded it. But the funny thing about
Lasso doesn't even owe him that much money. He was staying with him for a while in like a hotel or something, and he skipped out on his bill.
Right.
What does he owe him? A couple $100 maybe?
Well, whatever it was in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Like in the 1800s when he did that, because I think it was in California. And then you find out, like, as he moves to the bar and pays all this money to have this new life, he could have just paid the debt and not worried about it.
Yeah.
Like when he buys the truck with the women's volleyball bumper sticker on the back.
And that's the cool part of that story is he goes to this bar, kills the owner of the bar, and then he takes over and becomes the bartender and the owner. No one knows he's a vampire. He's just Jackie Daytona. And for some reason he gets involved in the volleyball team, which I love that. I just because it's like an 80s or 90s type of thing there. I think I have a weird feeling from that.
Yeah. It's the mysterious stranger comes into town and fixes the fixes the town, and everyone loves them, which is funny to me because he's the worst person on the on the show. He's like the worst person of characters.
Yep.
It's like hedonistic asshole. But when he's Laszlo doesn't give a shit about anybody, but Jackie Daytona cares about everybody.
Right.
And the only difference is jeans and a toothpick.
Yeah. No one could tell that who he is. In fact, even Jim the vampire can't tell who he is because Jim shows up, and Jackie has to pretend like, oh my God, is he going to find out who I am? So they're both trying to drink beers or tricking each other. When they turn their head, they throw it back. Mine, that was a fine human being.
Yeah. And then he sees that he can't see him in the mirror. That's how he figures it out, right?
Right.
And it's so great that Jim also falls in love with the women's volleyball team.
Yeah.
And comes back, and then they said the bar catches fire because they're fighting.
Yeah, they do that whole big thing where Laszlo says, I'm going to leave now. And he gets in the truck. And like you said, he smashes in. He goes, okay, I'm just going to walk home.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to drive. That thing cost a fortune.
So they resolve it that way. I hope we see more of Jim the Vampire in the future, certainly in the third season, because that was a great.
I think we will, because people from season 1 came into this season. So I assume that Jim's going to have to collect his debt.
Yes. And
because that still wasn't resolved.
Or Jim could stay with them long enough to work off the debt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he stays in their house the amount of time that Laszlo stayed in his house or whatever.
Right. I kind of want every season has a Jackie Daytona episode where just he goes off part of the country or world, and Jackie Daytona becomes something like he can go like live on the beach and become a bartender there or something like that, or a whole other profession. Or
like a Cocktail where he goes down to Jamaica or wherever they were. I forget wherever they were. I don't remember because I'm old. But like you said, more people came back, so that moves on to episode 7, which is The Return with Nick Kroll as Simon the Devious and Sean Clush as Elvis. Now, who's Sean Clush, Jeff?
He's like the best Elvis impersonator in the world. He's always on the Impractical Jokers cruises that I went on.
Oh, okay.
He won, like a long time ago, maybe 20, 25 years ago or something, he won Best Elvis Impersonator reality show that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And like he's literally like the best of the Elvis impersonators.
I just like that he's a vampire and he's slumming in the sewers with Simon the Devious and his group.
Yep.
Including Count Rapula, which is the best name I've ever heard.
and Carol, who is one of the most haunting creatures in any sort of film or television.
That was very insectoid vampire, scary, freaky. You wouldn't want to be around it. And all she want to do is kill Guillermo.
Yeah. And he killed her in self-defense, and then Nandor found out and decided whether he should rat him out or protect him. He ended up choosing to protect him, which sort of sparked their relationship again in terms of like progressing their storyline of familiar and vampire.
She definitely wasn't killed by Guillermo. Why would you say that?
Yeah.
I think the Nick Kroll character is great on that show. And
it's the dumbest like running like I mean that in a good way, the dumbest running storyline. He wants the hat that's clearly cursed, and he keeps hurting her and threatening his life.
Yeah.
And he still wants the hat just so he has something over on Laszlo. And Laszlo should just let him have the hat.
No, the hat is terrible.
Right.
The hat's the worst.
And I do like the way Nandor handles Guillermo, figuring out that he's able to kill vampires, and like you said, finally having a little bit of respect for him and maybe even a little bit of fear.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to episode 8, which is a collaboration that stars Greta Lee as Celeste and Jack O'Donnell as Benji Everett. Now, Benji is Nandor's familiar from the 70s, so it kind of opens up that way. He's an old man now, but in the 70s, he would go out and party, and they show you all those pictures, which is one good thing about this show, and I think Joe mentioned this yesterday when we recorded this originally, that because of how old they are, you can go to pretty much any place in time in the last 200-300 years, and you can have a story.
Yeah, you can bring it to present day.
Right.
Like just a like a vampire, like Jim the Vampire now. Like he was at the 1800s. He came back to confront Laszlo 200 or 300 years later, however much it was, and then his Nandor's old familiar from just the 70s, like only like what 40 years ago or 50 years ago,
Right.
and and it shows like Nandor is he's always been like this in terms of like just promising the familiars all this stuff and then never giving it to them. So
Right.
there might be even familiars, like I don't know if we'll see them obviously, but familiars before Guillermo and the one on this episode. There could be just a whole line of familiars that he just lied to for hundreds and hundreds of years.
And so Guillermo takes Benji up to his room, which I guess was Benji's room before it was Guillermo's. And he goes, I used to beat off into that pillow.
No, not that one specifically.
Yeah. No, it's everything is the same. That's what I think is cool. So Guillermo decides to leave because he feels disrespected by Nandor, and he's going to go stay with Celeste, who is a vampire, and he's going to be her familiar. It turns out she has a whole bunch of familiars, and she's making them in this really avant-garde, artsy loft, making them move furniture around and kind of be her servant. She's really annoying, and she makes him have an orgy, and eventually it turns out that she's not a vampire. She's just fucking around because her.
Yeah, well, she was a familiar for another vampire, and came to Guillermo and told Guillermo that I finally got turned, and
Yeah,
he got pissed that like it happened that quickly compared to like what Nandor's just been like lying and dragging him around for all these years about I'll turn you into a vampire at some point, and just keeps leading him on. So he quickly just jumped over there.
yeah.
Well, when we saw that old
He could
guy
be a
come
vampire.
back and say, Nandor promised to make me a vampire too, but here he is. He's like 90 years old and
Yeah,
he was never turned into a
geriatric.
vampire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he came back to become like to be turned. It's like, why do you want to be a 90-year-old? Like, there's no joy in that. Like,
No, you're just old forever.
you're just old forever.
So toward the end of that episode, he eventually does make. They get really tired of having him around, Benji. So he makes him a vampire. You think that he's just abandoning him at a rest stop, but he turns him into a vampire and he flies away, right?
Right.
Yep.
So Nandor did that for him, and then Guillermo comes back. Nandor wants him back, and he's able to start getting a little respect. Like he gets a day off, and some other concessions, which we'll find out later. And then the side story in that episode is at the beginning. You see Laszlo grab a jogger and kill him, or try to kill him and eat him, and he hears "Come On Eileen" playing from a car radio. He goes, "Damn it, what is that song?" or whatever. I forget the line, but it turns out he had written it 100 years ago or 200 years ago.
Yeah.
It was about fish, right? Chum on Eileen.
Yeah. It's about some, yeah. And then you find out he wrote like all these other songs with Nausea. And they're just like this like old folk duo.
Yeah, and a lot of those songs became hits. And so Colin tries to get them to. He starts egging them on to play to play for people, and he takes to an open mic night at a club, and he keeps giving them bad advice, like, when people play a new song at a concert, that's a lot of excitement there. So make sure you tell everybody it's a new song.
Yeah, because Colin wanted the feast. He knew that would have drained the energy out of the room, and he could have.
And the very first thing that happens when they get into that club is a comic is wrapping up, and he's not getting any laughs. And before they cut the commercial, they cut to Colin, and you see him turn his head and his eyes light up.
Yeah, very realistic. Very realistic.
I know. I've been in open mic nights at comedy clubs sometimes, and when there's nobody there but just a couple other comics, and I feel so bad because I can laugh. I just feel bad. I feel uncomfortable. I feel like I'm up there because that's what would be happening no matter what if I were on.
It's not fun for either side. If it's a small audience, you're both on this. Like you and the audience, the comedian and the audience members are on the spot.
Right. And then Colin's plans are foiled because it turns out that Laszlo wrote Kokomo, and they start performing that, and the whole audience starts singing and enjoying it. So
going back to the cocktail theme.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they do end up doing a cocktail episode, they have the rights to that song.
Yeah, they do. Laszlo's Law.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Cocktail, Joe?
I've seen a long time ago. I know I've seen all of it. I don't know if I've seen all of it at once, but it's been on TV in perpetuity since like 1980.
Right,
yeah.
But Like it's one of those movies like whenever you turn it on like on a channel, it's like, oh, I've seen this part already, but it's for every scene.
Yes.
They didn't make you watch that before you started bartending at the Relapse?
No, no, I watched it before that, but yeah, I there was no real training at Relapse.
It turned a lot of guys into douchebags. A lot of
Oh
guys
yeah,
wanted to be that. And Jeff and I probably saw it together at the movie theater when it came out. But when I started going to bars, maybe it was toward the tail end of that, still having some influence. But they all looked like they had their hair cut that way, and they all wanted to do the flipperoo with the bottle and all that. Boy,
you guys want to see a really funny video on YouTube? Look up Chris Fairbanks cocktail.
Uh-huh.
The stand-up comedian, very funny guy. He inserted himself into the movie.
Oh, that sounds hilarious.
It's about 10 or 12 minutes of the movie, like different scenes where he's in it. Like when they're all singing, like when him and his mentor are singing like on the sidewalk and he falls down the subway steps.
Uh-huh.
Fairbanks goes, oh, I can do that too, and like does it himself. Or when they're discussing like opening up Cocktail and Dreams, and it was like they're dealing with the percentages, like Cocktail and Dreams, and like pink bright neon letters, and you hear Chris Fairbanks goes, "Oh, that sounds awful." It's like, we'll do 70-30. And Chris Fairbanks, you hear him go, how about 33-33-33? Like he and it's like seamless. Like it looks odd, but like the actual like him talking to them, like editing wise, like it's seamless that he's in the movie, and he somehow makes it turn into a really dark film, like the actual storyline.
I'm gonna watch that. That sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
And the whole plot of that movie is ridiculous anyway. He knocks up the girl in wherever they are. I forget where they are. He knocks up the girl, and they come back, and her father tries to buy him off because he's a dirty Italian or something. I mean, that's some real old 80s stuff.
Yeah. You're not fit for my daughter.
Yes. You're Italian. You're swarthy. They never did make a sequel to that, did they?
No. Well, if Top Gun 2 takes off, you can.
Can't wait for that.
Yeah.
I didn't really like Top Gun all that much. If you want to know. All right. So the final episode that we're going to talk about real quickly here is episode 9. It's called Witches, featuring Lucy Punch as Lilith. She's the leader of a coven of witches who show up. They have a goat show up at the house in Staten Island. And the first vampire they grab is Laszlo, who is out pruning his apples. And because he can't eat them, he just prunes them and throws them on the floor. The goat shows up. The goat. What's the goat's name? I forgot. It had a funny name.
I don't remember what it was either.
God damn it! I have a very bad brain today. But they take both Laszlo and Nandor, and they have them strapped to these like gurney things that are raised, and they start dancing around them seductively to get them aroused. And they're like, "Oh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun." And they want to do a semen extraction, except they have these horrible brass devices with screws in them. So Guillermo and Nadia and Colin all go to try to find them, and they're driving in a car chasing. They're in a car following the witches, and they finally get there, and they get trapped in a room that's all doors. It's like bewitched with all these doors, so you can't get out. And they're trying all these different things, different ways to get out. And Colin is, of course, trying to be the one to save them. And his dry humor is like, no, that's not it. And then eventually
Mm-hmm.
there's a door that says exit in Spanish, right?
Yes.
And Guillermo
found it.
Yeah. And then Colin gets defensive. Well, I would have found it eventually. I'm the one who did it. I found it and saved the day.
Yeah.
One side thing, they end up saving them, of course. The witches reveal their true selves, and they're all hags, of course, because they're older, and they need the semen to stay young. So Guillermo comes up with a plan to extract it, or to get it from them and just sell it to the witches so no one gets killed or maimed, which is a pretty smart thing to do. But meanwhile, Guillermo is showing his independence by he can now take a 15-minute break every 4 hours, and that's pissing off Nadia. Which I thought was
the progression of Guillermo's storyline of like either moving on or becoming a bigger part of like the actual house and having more of a say in things.
Mm-hmm.
See what happens in this season finale, because that was the Witches episode is the penultimate episode of this. So something's going to happen between Guillermo and Nandor in this next episode that I feel like we'll have to wait a whole year and probably to see what happens next.
Or even longer.
Yeah.
When they can go back into production.
Hopefully only a year. Maybe they'll have it ready for us. And then this episode wraps up in a very funny way because both Laszlo and Nandor are still tumescent. And so they just go, do you want to just finish each other off and go to bed?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
And I liked that Guillermo was like, I'm already cleaning up all this semen anyway, so I might as well just give it to these witches. That's not going to hurt anything.
Well, it's showing that he's like becoming more not intuitive. What's the word? Like he's more because he talked about his business that he wants to go on Shark Tank for with the roll on blood.
Yeah.
Like to get rid of the blood.
Right.
It's like he's becoming like this like maybe that's what happens. He just becomes like this vampire mogul and like becomes this huge businessman like within the underworld here on Earth with all these products that they can all use.
Well, so episode 10, which is the season finale, airs on June 10th. And of course, if you have, like I said earlier, if you have Hulu and all that, you can watch it there. Joe, what are your 3 favorite episodes from this season?
All right. From my number one was On the Run with Jackie Daytona. Just Matt Barrett. I don't think his character's ever really held an episode like with that much on his shoulders, like because that was like a one-man show, even with Mark Hamill.
Right.
Like, all of them were derived of Laszlo dealing with like having a new life as not a vampire, even though he was a vampire.
Jackie Daytona.
This whole persona. He's from Tucson, Arizona. When they asked him, he's like, "You have a weird accent for like this is how we talk in Tucson, Arizona." But yeah, like so, I like that episode so much. I hope they revisit that alter ego again at some point, like some shows do, like with like in Parks and Rec with Ron Swanson's jazz saxophone player.
Yeah.
You'll just every season or two, like Jackie Daytona pops up for some reason, like he has to go somewhere as Jackie Daytona.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Number 2 was The Curse. Just them trying to, like I said earlier, dealing with old technology as if it's like brand new technology that no one was able to figure out. I thought was funny. And then also The Return I thought was funny. Just them fighting over the damn hat for 2 seasons now, which is like it's the prize no one wants. Like, can you imagine like if an Indiana Jones film or like National Treasures, like we got to save this thing no one wants. That's what they're both trying to like. That's what they're fighting for.
They would be better off if he just gave the hat to Nick Kroll. He would be so much better off.
And he wouldn't have to deal with Nick Kroll's character. He wouldn't have to deal with Nick Kroll's character ever again.
Yeah.
And also, that's it. The returns.
What? Uh-oh. We lose Joe?
He's dithering.
He'll come back.
See if he comes back. My those were all 3 of Joe's were my favorites too, but I liked Brain Scramblies also.
Yeah.
Which is the Super Bowl one.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of the whole there he's back.
There he is.
Hey.
So what were you saying?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
The return episode was the one with Colin dealing with the online troll, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that side story of Colin dealing with an actual troll cracked me up too.
Yeah, with a giant troll penis that was blurred until the sun hit him. He turned into a statue.
Yeah.
And I liked about that because he was like engaging the online trolls to try and get some energy as an energy vampire. And then he started losing because he was going against a real troll.
Yeah.
At first he was like talking about you're winning if you're getting people to say, you're like, shut up, jackass, or something like that. And then he ends up saying it to the troll.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Mine, did you finish, Jeff? I didn't want to step on you.
The Brain Scramblies was the one I wanted to mention.
That was one of Steph's. She also liked The Return and On the Run. Mine are all pretty much the same. And like Jeff, I love Colin's promotion. That's one of my favorites as well. Where because the whole episode was pretty much based on Colin, and I thought he held the show as well. So, episode 10 comes out this week, and and we'll probably be talking about it. But I really appreciate you coming on, Joe, and talking to us. And
No problem.
I'm going to
Thanks for having
recommend
me.
that you steal Wellington Paranormal if you're missing the What We Do in the Shadows during the off season.
Oh, okay.
Nobody's streaming it here. It only shows in New Zealand and Australia, but you can find it out there. It's made by all the same people.
Right.
And it's the cops from the movie What We Do in the Shadows, and they just go around and investigate different paranormal stuff that's going on in Wellington. There's 2 seasons, and they're both top.
I don't need to steal. I'll just fly down there and watch it.
Yeah, do it.
I'll get a hotel room and just stream it from there.
From the movie, the original movie, the cops.
Yeah.
They were in the original movie.
Oh, okay.
They're
Shit.
the characters in this, and FX or somebody needs to get this show over here, and they will probably eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, you got to find it.
Okay.
But I recommend you do Wellington Paranormal. It's called.
All right.
All right.
Well, guys, thank you very much for coming on. I have to record something else here real quick. So if you don't want to
Put those songs in.
yeah, well, if you don't want to sit there while I read 3 songs and stories behind them,
Oh, okay.
listener, you don't have to.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
I appreciate it.
Guys.
Jeff, you should stick around.
All right.
So we had talked about this in the other part that we were actually able to record, and Steph came up with a great idea, as she always does. We're doing these playlists, and right now we're doing a Spotify playlist for summer road songs. And we told you what they were, and Steph said, well, I want to tell you what these songs mean to me. So from now on, I don't know why we didn't think of it. It makes great sense. So one of our listeners, Brian Jackson, one of our Patreons, sent us this yesterday. And his, I'll do them really, really quick. You don't mind, do you, Jeff?
No, I don't mind. I'm not going to tell you what songs mean to me, though, in the future.
Why?
I'm not letting anybody in, man.
Keep it tight. Keep it tight, baby. So he kicks it off with the Black Crowes, Wiser Time. And Brian says the song reminds him of being in the backseat of a friend's car on a long road trip. All the fun of being in a car with your friends, the jokes, the great places, and the great times we all had in our youth. And I said this to Caitlin the other night, my wife. I said, there's 2 things that can transport you back in time: smells and music, songs. When you first heard a song, or if you're, that anytime I hear a Def Leppard song off of Hysteria, I think of riding around our little town with our friend Denny and his Chevette.
Yeah.
Because that's all we listened to that summer, that album and White Snake. And there was one more, Girls, Girls, Girl. Another song that he picked was Fu Manchu Mongoose. And Brian says the song always made him roll down the windows, and when the guitars kicked in, he'd put the pedal to the floor and pretend like the piece of shit car he had could go 1,000 miles an hour. Plus it has a cowbell, he says, and who doesn't love cowbell? And lastly, Chuck Mangione. Is it Mangione or Mangione? Mangina.
Mangione?
Yeah, he did the Cannonball Run theme, which is one of the greatest and funniest car racing movies ever made. Plus, it's part of the Soft Rock Brigade. # Soft Rock is the answer. That is tied into the Von Hessler Doctrine where I work. So, Brian, thank you.
Don't mention the Von Hessler Doctrine, or you'll get in trouble.
Yeah, no more mentioning the Von Hessler Doctrine. Now you can mention it all you want. So, Brian, thank you. And next week when I post it, that's what we're going to be looking for. A couple of songs and what they mean to you. Except for Jeff, because keeping it.
Nobody gets in.
Nobody gets in. All right. So stick around for the rest of the show.
Cool.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for doing it again.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Go check out that Mexican place. It looks really good.
I'm going to also check out that show. What was it called again?
Wellington Paranormal.
Yeah.
I think there's only 12 episodes total, maybe 13 because they did a Christmas special.
Yeah. I'll find it. I'll find it on torrents. See you later, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.